Hello everyone and welcome to Best Side Cycling. In this video series, we're going to go over my ride from my home near Seattle all the way to Vancouver, 2 days, 195 miles, 7,000 feet on a fully loaded Brompton. This took a whole summer of sort of training and practicing and tuning the specs of my Brompton, and it was not an easy one. Definitely the hardest one I did all summer, so stay tuned and you'll learn all the ins and outs of this route so that you'll be fully prepared for the RSVP Cascade event, or if you want to do this on your own. So let's get into it. Hello everyone and welcome to Best Side Cycling. It's Labor Day weekend and I am going on a solo trip to Vancouver on my Brompton. This will be a self-supported ride. As you can tell, my front bag is the Burrow bag, pretty loaded up with all my sort of clothes, camera gear, and everything I would need. And then also really featuring right now is this cool Vincita top tube bag, this long one. I loaded up with my snacks and other things I might need to get on the go. And then I got 2 bottles here, one here at the top and then one also in the bag. So let's head out and then we'll talk more on the road. Conditions today seem pretty good. Definitely in the green AQI, and also it is pretty chilly, 15 degrees Celsius. I expect it to go up to about 25, 26 with some light headwinds on the way. So those headwinds might get pretty bad later in Mount Vernon, but we'll wait and see. But otherwise, just gonna keep on rolling for now, get through to King County to Snohomish. So let's roll out. And we're officially off. This first day is going to be 116 miles for me to make it all the way to Bellingham. I'm going to be following the Cascade RSVP route pretty much to the letter, but I don't live exactly near the start line, so I'm going to be intercepting it right at Bothell near Blythe Park. So we start off with these roads that I'm very familiar with on the east side, going through Bellevue and Kirkland. This is pretty exciting as I've never done anything to the likes of bike touring before, so this is basically my first foray into it. Basically just having everything with me and just even ending up at a hotel is pretty novel to me, so I'm pretty excited. Energy is still pretty high as we just make our first 16 miles of our trip. So we're here at Blythe Park where we meet the RSVP route. So first hiccup of the day, I'm not really getting any turn-by-turn signals on my Garmin, so I'm gonna try to reload the route, use the porta potty over here, and then really the fun part begins now. So after setting off, I realized I did have one really nice saving grace, and that is because I rode this basically only 1 week after the official event. All the lane markings were still on the ground. You can see there the Dan Henrys. So I sort of had a very good fallback plan. Luckily, the RSVP route from Cascade loaded just fine. I think there was a technical issue with certain map settings on Ride with GPS and my Garmin that didn't allow it to have turn-by-turn. But that's resolved. So, I mean, with these long rides, things are going to happen. But yeah, we're going through here on the Burke Gilman now. We're going to be heading into Woodinville, where I would say the first actual challenge of the day is not the climb that you're going to be getting, but a set of railroad tracks that are very vicious. So you just saw me pass over one as you make that initial turn, but there is another one coming up that is so parallel to the road that it seems to take someone down every time I ride here. There's even like a yellow sign you can see on the right that tells you to be cautious for cyclists. So I'm looking around, making sure that I have room to really make this super wide maneuver here as we get into the lane, just so that I can turn to the right to be as perpendicular I can with the tracks. And that's really what it takes in this case, especially if you have thinner tires like I do with the 16-inch wheels. But with that done, we're now moving on to the climb. So here's the first major climb of the day, as well as I think probably the tallest sustained one. It's very obvious when it comes in as we start on this flat road, and then once it turns to Wooden Duval, it just sort of shoots up. It's a 360-foot climb with about 5.3% gradient, but there is a section where it goes into like the 8 to 9, 10% for a little bit. It's not overall too bad compared to a lot of climbs we have here in Seattle, but definitely brace for it, as yeah, this will be your first major challenge, especially if you're on a 40-pound Brompton like myself today. So it's a bit nostalgic riding this now versus my first time in 2019 when I participated on the event. But yeah, let's get to it and climb over this thing. We're in the middle of this climb. Pacing wise, I started out late as per usual, but I'm expecting hopefully to average maybe 13-14 miles across the whole thing. So not really too fast, but pretty good considering I'm on this Brompton loaded with all my gear. So that should be fun. And yeah, let's see how we get along. The only part that I'm thinking about maybe is just this upcoming part to Snohomish. I tend to run into a lot of cars there, so we'll see how I go solo. But otherwise, still rolling, climbing this hill. The only interesting thing to note is there is this little detour thing. I have the signage to follow on the ground, but yeah, it keeps you away from cars as you go onto the steeper section. But you eventually make it up to the top where you do have to make this left turn with the gas station, which I always remember being pretty memorable because there's so many people there waiting up for all their friends. But nonetheless, we finally get to our first downhill of the day. Make sure to cherish this one and pick up as much speed as you can, as this part is actually sort of rolling hills, so it'll really help to keep your momentum. You can just see how big my bag is right now and how not aerodynamic it is, as yeah, this is a proper heavy bike. I regret not actually like measuring and weighing the whole thing, but with everything together, including the tube bag and everything, I think easily I was over 40 pounds, maybe getting even closer to 45 or something like that. But yeah, so here's me struggling after using all the needed momentum. But this is sort of where the ride transitions from all the nice trails and sort of bike lanes into more sort of suburban rural country riding, where you definitely have to interact a lot more with cars. And here was another memorable spot to the ride, not necessarily because of anything, but it's when you have to pass the state route 522. It just seems very odd to me as like a bike sort of going right across the highway. When I rode it for the first time, that was sort of a interesting experience overall. But it's been a long time riding since then, and I've gotten a lot more experience riding on these sort of roads. But definitely one first thing is that timing is really key. Riding between rush hour versus a down period can feel really different on the same road. So for today, it's a long weekend. It's Friday morning after rush hour. So overall, I think I was pretty much in the clear, but this area that we're heading into, and for a lot of different parts of the ride, there might not necessarily be shoulder available. So as we go along, I'm going to give some of my favorite tips in terms of how to keep safe when riding in this type of environment. So we made it to what is normally the first rest stop at Mount B, I think Elementary. And yeah, it's just right over here. But even with the signs on the ground, but today we're just gonna go straight through. I'm probably not gonna stop to Snohomish just to grab some water, but my main break of the day probably will just be at Arlington. So should be good. That'll be around 55-60 miles in, so that'll be nice. Still sort of cloudy, but air feels super good. It is super cool. So a great day for a good bike ride. So let's keep on rolling. So this section after was probably the one I was most nervous about for the whole ride, just because I know that there's a lot of traffic, including big trucks and stuff. So biggest tip here is definitely to have a radar or a mirror or some sort to just have awareness of cars behind you. I use the Garmin Varia radar, and it is an essential for me because it just gives me a heads up in terms of when to expect cars behind me. I even see just their relative distance to me, so it just lets me prepare, also to create some more room for buffer for myself. But also remember that if you do hear a large truck or anything, it doesn't hurt to simply just get out of the way and stop. Your safety comes number one, and as riding a lone rider, you see this maneuver I pull here. I know that there's a big truck behind me, so I slow down here to the right just to let them pass first so that I can just keep going. He gives me room, but you don't want to mess around with this sort of stuff. So just having that awareness with a radar or mirror goes a long way. Alright, we're fast approaching one of my favorite views of the whole ride. So this spot is just so distinct. It's still sort of just the morning fog around, but man, on a nice day, this has got to be my favorite part of the whole ride until like Chuckanut. So let's check it out. So yeah, as you're on this long road, there's sort of this bend, and I love it because it just suddenly opens up in view. And I'm really a sucker for all the ones that are like a very wide, expansive one. Generally when you're in the city and you're in a place with so many hills, like in Pacific Northwest, you don't get views like this that often. So today is definitely a bit more muted due to the weather. It's still quite gray and sort of cold, but I've ridden here on a nice day and it is amazing. Just seeing mountains out to the east, all the farmland and fresh air around you can't be beat on a bike ride. At this point, the traffic has calmed down a lot more. There's a lot less that goes on after you turn off onto here, so that's also much appreciated. As well as, if you've been enjoying this video, please roll over that like button and subscribe. I've decided to really split this up into a really in-depth series on my whole journey, so you're pretty much gonna get all the details you need to know to do this route for yourself, as well as find out what my experience is like. Right now, everything is pretty hunky-dory, but I assure you, things are gonna happen later on. But with these shorter episodes, I'm hoping I'll be able to keep to a weekly upload schedule so that we can ride this whole journey together. But anyway, in terms of a few things that we passed by, there was like some U-pick berry farms. I saw people out there waving their hands, as well as I think there's like a really famous like country club wedding venue around here. It's sort of funny because I went there and I realized that I biked to it first before ever driving in this area. But that's sort of what happens when you're a cyclist around here, and as you approach Snohomish and get on Airport Way, it starts getting a lot busier again. So this is sort of my focus face as you're just riding along. It's really these sort of intersections between like rural and suburban areas where it does get a little bit more uncomfortable riding. I'll point them out in the ride, but I would say this section is probably one other one that I remember throughout, but nothing too unreasonable. And then make it over to this bridge that passes over the Snohomish River, and you'll be in Snohomish, which is a great spot to really be one of your first main rest stops, as there's just a lot of local cafes nearby. And then I was in need of getting some water. I basically packed more than enough food for sure for a lot of the ride, but water is sort of hard to carry as much of. And then the other sort of local tip for this part is that up ahead you'll see like a green building to the right. That's actually like a public restroom, so that's a good spot to just take a quick stop. And there's also a coffee shop right next to it, Proper Joe, where I made my first visit. Alright, so we're here in Snohomish. This is a nice little spot at Proper Joe because it's right next to some public restrooms, so I always like going here. So while we're here, you can see what I got. I got a blue lemon loaf, and then here is my stem bag. Front is for all my snacks and stuff, and then the back is just necessity wallet and some meds. So that's where we're going to conclude today's video. We're about 33 miles in. Let me know what you think, what kind of things that you enjoy, what kind of things you want to see more of. There's going to be a lot more action to come, and the next video, just as a preview, is the all famous Centennial Trail, 60 miles if you go out and back. It is a truly great one, and we ride it for a ton of the way. So excited to show you next time. See you in the next video.